"Yes, yes," he grunted, holding on his hat-box as he ran. When he caught sight of the travelers, he stopped short and, not satisfied with peering through the eye-holes in his hat-box, took it off altogether and stood staring at them, his square eyes almost popping from his square head. Box their ears, box their ears, box their heads and arms and rears, box their legs, their hands and chests, box that fire plug for all the rest, and IRON box, screamed Chilliwaller, as Thun, with a soundless snort, sent a shower of sparks into a candy box bush, toasting all the marshmallows in the boxes. "Oh, aren't you afraid to go about in this bare-backed, bare-faced, unboxed condition?" he panted, exposed to the awful dangers of the raw outer air. Chilliwaller hastily clapped on his hat-box, but not before Randy noticed that his ears were nicely boxed, too. Without waiting for an answer to his question, the boxer, with one shove of his enormous boxed fist, pushed Thun under a box tree. Planety had just time to leap from his back when Chilliwaller shook a huge iron box loose and it came clanking down over the Thunder Colt. It was open at the bottom, and Thun, kicking and rearing underneath, jerked it east and west. "He'll soon grow used to it," muttered Chilliwaller, jabbing a dozen holes in the metal with a sharp pick he had drawn from a pocket in his box coat. "Now then, who's next? Ah, what a lovely lady!" Chilliwaller gazed rapturously at the princess from another planet, then clapping his hands, called sharply, "Bring the jewel boxes for her ears, flower boxes for herself, a bonnet box for her head, candy boxes for her hands, slipper boxes for those tiny silver feet. Bring stocking boxes, glove boxes, and hurry, hurry!" "Oh, please!" Randy put himself firmly between Planety and the determined Chilliwaller. "The outer air does not hurt us at all, Mr. Chilliwaller. In fact, we like it." "Just try to find a box big enough for me," invited Kabumpo, snatching up the little princess and setting her high on his shoulder. "I think I have a packing box that would just fit," mused the chief boxer, folding his arms and looking sideways at the elegant elephant. "Pack him up, pack him off, send him packing," chattered the other boxers, who had never seen anything like Kabumpo in their lives and distrusted him highly. But Chilliwaller himself was quite interested in his singular visitors and inclined to be more than friendly. "Better try our boxes," he urged seriously, as he took the pile of bright cardboard containers an assistant had brought him. "Without bragging, I can say that they are the best boxes grown. Stylish, nicely fitting, and decidedly comfortable to wear." "Ha, ha!" rumbled Kabumpo, rocking backward and forward at the very idea. "Mean to tell me you wear boxes over your other clothes and everywhere you go?" "Certainly." Chilliwaller nodded vigorously. "Do you suppose we want to stand around and disintegrate? What happens to articles after they are taken out of their boxes?" he demanded argumentatively. "Tell me that." "Why," said Randy thoughtfully, "they're worn or sold or eaten or spoiled." "Exactly." Chilliwaller snapped him up quickly. "They are worn out, they lose their freshness and their newness. Well, we intend to save ourselves from such a fate, and we do," he added complacently. "You're certainly fresh enough," chuckled Kabumpo with a wink at Randy. "But might not these boxes be fun to wear?" inquired Planety, looking rather wistfully at the bright heap the boxer chief had intended for her. "No, no, and no," rumbled Kabumpo positively. "No boxes, as you wish." Chilliwaller shrugged his shoulders under his cardboard clothes box. "Shall I unbox the horse?" "Better not," decided Randy, looking anxiously at the sparks issuing from the punctures in Thun's box. "But perhaps you would show us the way through this boxwood," finished Chilliwaller. "Yes, I will be most honored to conduct you through our forest, and you may pick as many boxes as you wish, too," he added generously. "I'd like to do something for people who are so soon to spoil and wither." "Ha, ha! Now I'm sure that's very kind of you," roared Kabumpo, wiping his eyes on the fringe of his robe. "And I think it best we hurry along, my good fellow." "Oh, whither away? It would never do to have a spoiled king and princess and a bad horse and elephant on your hands." "Oh, if you'd only wear our boxes," begged Chilliwaller, almost ready to cry at the prospect of his visitors spoiling on the premises. Then, as Kabumpo shook his head again, the big boxer started off at a rapid shuffle, anxious to have them out of the woods as soon as possible. Thun, during all this conversation, had been kicking and bucking under his iron box, but now Planety tapped out a reassuring message with her staff and the Thunder Colt quieted down. On the whole, he behaved rather well, following the signals his little mistress tapped out, and pushing the iron box along without too much discomfort or complaint, though occasional indignant and fiery protests came puffing out of his iron container. Randy considered the journey through the box wood one of their gayest and most entertaining adventures. The woodmen in their brightly decorated boxes shuffled cheerfully along beside them, stopping now and then to point with pride to their square box-like dwellings set at regular intervals under the spreading boxwood trees. The whole forest was covered by an enormous wooden box that shut out the sky and gave everything an artificial and unreal look. It was in one side of this monster box that Thun had burned the hole to admit them. Randy and Planety, riding sociably together on Kabumpo's back, picked boxes from branches of all the trees they could reach, and it was such fun and so exciting they paid scarcely any attention to the remarks of Chilliwaller. Even the elegant elephant snapped off a box or two and handed them back to his royal riders. "Oh, look!" exulted Randy, opening a bright blue cardboard box. "This is just full of chocolate candy." "Oh, throw that trash away," advised Chilliwaller contemptuously. "We think nothing of the stuff that grows inside. It's the boxes themselves we are after." "But this candy is good," objected Randy after sampling several pieces. "And mind you, Kabumpo, Planety has just picked a jewel box full of real chains, rings, and bracelets." "Oh, they are netiful, netiful," crooned the princess of another planet, hugging the velvet jewel box to her breast. "Keep them if you wish," sniffed Chilliwaller, "but they're just rubbish to us. When we pick boxes, we toss the contents away." "Now that's plain foolishness," snorted Kabumpo, aghast at such a waste, as Randy picked a pencil box full of neatly sharpened pencils, and Planety a tidy sewing kit fitted out with scissors, needles, and spools of thread. The thimble was not quite ripe, but as Planety had never stitched a stitch in her royal life, she did not notice nor care about that. Indeed, before they came to the other side of the boxwood, she and Randy were sitting in the midst of a high heap of their treasures, and Kabumpo looked as if he were making a lengthy safari, loaded up and down for the journey. Randy had stuffed most of the boxes into big net bags Kabumpo always brought along for emergencies, and these he tied to the elegant elephant's harness. There were bread boxes packed with tiny loaves and biscuits, cake boxes stuffed with sugar buns and cookies, stamp boxes, flower boxes, glove boxes, coat and suit boxes. Last of all, Randy picked a bandbox, and it played such gay tunes when he lifted the lid, Planety clapped her silver hands, and even Kabumpo began to hum under his breath. Traveling through the boxwood with kind-hearted Chilliwaller was more like a surprise party than anything else. To Planety it was all so delightful she began to wonder how she had ever been satisfied with her life on another planet. "Are all the countries down here as different and happy as this?" she asked, fingering the necklace she had taken from the jewel box. "All our countries are grayling and sad. No birds sing, no flowers grow, and people are all the same." "Oh, just wait till you've been to OZ," exclaimed Randy, shutting the bandbox so he could talk better. "Oz countries are even more surprising than this, and wait till you've seen Ev and Jinniky's red glass castle." "You'll never reach it," predicted Chilliwaller, shaking his hatbox gloomily. You'll spoil in a few hours now, especially the big one, loaded down with all that stuff and rubbish." "Throw it away," he begged again, looking so sorrowful Randy was afraid he was going to burst out crying. "Toss out that rubbish and wear our boxes before it is too late." "Rubbish?" Randy shook his finger reprovingly at the boxer. "Why, all these things are terribly nice and useful. If we go through enemy countries, we can placate the natives with cakes and cigars, and if we go through friendly countries, we'll use the suits and flowers and candy for gifts. Really, you've been a great help to us, Mr. Chiliwalla, and if you ever come to Regalia, you may have anything in my castle you wish. Are there any boxes in your castle?" Chiliwalla peered up at Randy through the slits in his hat box. "Not many," admitted Randy truthfully. "You see, in my country we keep the contents and throw the boxes away." "Throw the boxes away?" gasped Chiliwalla, jumping 3 times into the air. "Oh, you rogues, you rascals, you boxables, lefters, righters, boxers all, here at once, have at these box-destroying savages." "Now see what you've done," mourned Kabumpo, as hundreds of the boxers, heeding Chiliwalla's call, darted out of their dwellings and came leaping from behind the box bushes and trees. "You've started a war, that's what." Box them good," shrieked Chiliwalla, raining harmless blows on Kabumpo's trunk with his boxed fists. 100 more boxed both Thun and the elegant elephant from the rear, and so loud and angry were their cries, Planety covered her ears. "Too bad we have to leave when everything was so pleasant," wheezed Kabumpo. "But never mind, here's the other side of the boxwood. Flatten out, youngsters, and I'll bump through." And bump through he did, with such a splintering of boards it sounded like an explosion of cannon crackers. Thun, at 3 taps from Planety, bumped after, and before the boxers realized what was happening, they were far away from there. "I'll soon have that box off you," panted Kabumpo. And putting his trunk under Thun's iron box, he heaved it up in short order, screaming shrilly as he did, for the Thunder Colt's breath had made the metal uncomfortably hot. "I thank you, great and mighty master." Thun sent the words up in a perfect shower of sparks. "Let us begone from these noxious boxers." "Oh, they're not so bad," mused Randy, as Planety signaled for Thun to go left. "Just peculiar. Imagine keeping the boxes and throwing away all the lovely things inside. And imagine a country where everything grows in boxes," he added, standing up to wave at Chiliwalla and his square-headed comrades, who were looking angrily through the break in the side of their wall. "Goodbye," he called clearly. "Goodbye, Chiliwalla, and thanks for the presents." "Boxy balls!" hissed the Boxer Chief and his men, shaking their fists furiously at the departing visitors. "And that makes us no better than cannibals, I suppose," grunted Kabumpo, looking rather wearily at the stretch of forest ahead. He had rather hoped to find himself in open country. Chapter 10. Night in the Forest. All afternoon the 4 travelers moved through the Ixian forest, Planety exclaiming over the flowers, ferns, and bright birds that flitted from tree to tree, Thun sending up frequent high-flown sentences, Kabumpo and Randy looking rather anxiously for some landmark that would prove they were on the road to Ev. As it grew darker, the elegant elephant wisely decided to make camp, stopping in a small, tidy clearing for that purpose. As Kabumpo swung to an impressive halt, Randy slid to the ground, pulling the net bags with him, and began to sort out the boxes containing food. Then he quickly gathered some faggots for a fire, as the night was raw and chilly, and had Planety signal Thun to breathe on the wood. Thun, only too happy to be of some use, quickly lighted the campfire, and he and the little princess watched curiously while Randy prepared his own and Kabumpo's supper, making coffee in a tin box with some water Kabumpo had fetched in his collapsible canvas bucket. The Elegant Elephant did rather well with the contents of 7 cake boxes and 4 bread and cereal containers, and Randy found so many good things to eat among Chillywalla's presents, he felt sorry not to be able to share them with Planety or Thun. "It would be more fun if you ate too," he observed, looking down sideways at the little princess, who was sitting on a boulder, hands clasped about her knees, while she gazed contentedly up at the stars. "Would it?" Planety smiled faintly, tapping her silver heels against the rock. "This seems night enough," she sighed, stretching up her arms luxuriantly, "but now it is time to ret." Slipping off her long metal cape, the princess of another planet tossed one end against a white birch and the other to a tall pine. To Randy's surprise, the ends of the cape instantly attached themselves to the trees, making a soft, flexible hammock. Into this Planety climbed with utmost ease and satisfaction. "Good net, Randy and Big Bumpo, dear," she called softly. "Take care of Thun. I've told him to stay where he is till the earling, and he will." With a smile, Planety closed her bright eyes, and the wind swaying her silver hammock soon rocked her to sleep. It had been a long day, and Randy felt very drowsy himself. Walking over to the Thunder Colt, he turned his head so that his fiery breath would fall harmlessly on a cluster of damp rocks. He was pleased to find this steed from another planet so obedient and gentle. Though formed of some live and lively black metal, Thun was soft and satiny to the touch and seemed to enjoy having his ears scratched and his neck rubbed as much as an ordinary horse. "Tap me twice on the shoulder if aught occurs, Slandy," he signaled, blowing the words out lazily between Randy's pats. "And good net to you, my Nodsies, good net." "That language is just full of foolishness," sniffed Kabumpo, spreading a blanket on the ground for Randy, and then stretching himself full length beneath a beech tree. "Put out the fire, Nozzy, my lad. The creature's breath makes light enough to frighten off any wild men or monsters." "Oh, I don't believe there are any wild beasts or savages in this forest," Randy said, stamping out the embers of the campfire. "It's too quiet and peaceful. I have an idea we're almost across Ix and will reach Ev by morning. What do you think, Kabumpo?" Kabumpo made no answer, for the Elegant Elephant had stopped thinking and was already comfortably asnore. So, with a terrific yawn, Randy wrapped himself in the blanket and, curling up close to his big and faithful comrade, fell into an instant and pleasant slumber. Morning came all too soon, and Randy was rudely awakened by Kabumpo, who was shaking him violently by the shoulders. Come on," blustered the Elegant Elephant impatiently. "Stir out of it, my boy. We've all been up for hours. Is it proper to lie abed and let a princess light the fire?" "She didn't!" Sitting bolt upright, Randy saw that Planety, with Thun's help, actually had lighted a fire and set water to boil in the tin box just as he had done the evening before. "Oh my goodness, Planety, you mustn't do that rough work," he exclaimed, hurrying over to take the big cake box from Planety's hands. "Why not?" beamed the little princess, hugging the box close. "See, I have found the great choconut cake for Big Bumpo to eat. I mean neat." "Ha ha, choconut cake." Kabumpo swayed merrily from side to side. "Very neat, my dear. If there's one thing I love for breakfast, it's choconut cake." Laughing so he could hardly keep his balance, Kabumpo held out his trunk for the cake box. "What a splendid little castle keeper you'll make for some young king, Nettie, my child."
Nettie?
"Is that now my name?" Planety pushed back her flying cloud of hair with an interested sniff. "If you like it," said Randy, his ears turning quite red at Kabumpo's teasing remarks. Leading the little princess to a flat rock, he sat her down with great ceremony and then began opening up boxes of crackers and fruit. "Nettie's a night name," decided the princess, her head thoughtfully on one side. "I must tell Thun." Skipping over to the Thunder Colt, who with drooping head and tail was enjoying a little colt nap, she tapped out her new nickname in the strange code she used when talking to him. No longer Planety of another planet, flashed Thun, awake in a twinkling and sending up his message in a shower of sparks. But a Nettie of Oz. At least he's left off the N, mumbled Kabumpo, speaking thickly through the coconut cake which he had tossed whole into his capacious mouth. Sounds rather well, don't you think? Wonderful, agreed Randy, who could scarcely keep his eyes off the sparkling little princess. It's too bad she's not like us, Kabumpo. Then she could go back to Oz and stay there always. If she were like us, she wouldn't be so interesting, said Kabumpo, shaking his head judiciously. Besides, down here the poor child is or ev knows what, he went on, discarding a box of prunes for a carton of tea. How was the cake? Randy changed the subject, for he could not bear to think of Planety in danger of any sort. Stale, announced Kabumpo, making a wry face as he swallowed some tea leaves. I'll certainly be glad to catch up with some regular elephant food. This eating bits out of boxes is diabolical, simply diabolical. Here, give me those crackers and eat some of that other stuff. And look at little Nettie Ann, would you, shaking out that blanket as if she'd been traveling with us for years. Why, the lass is a born housewife. And isn't she pretty? Smiled Randy, waving to Planety as he began packing the boxes in the net bags again and stamping out the fire. I wonder what it's like up where she lives, Kabumpo. Why not ask her? Swinging up his saddle sacks, Kabumpo called gaily to the little princess, who came running over, the blanket neatly folded on her arm. Thank you, Nettie. You are certainly a great help to us. Taking the blanket and giving her an approving pat on the shoulder, Randy caught hold of Kabumpo's belt strap and pulled himself easily aloft. All ready to go? Planety nodded cheerfully as she mounted the Thunder Colt. Will this lightning be as nice as the last? She demanded, tapping Thun gently with her staff. Nicer, promised Randy as Thun pranced merrily ahead, Planety's long cape billowing like a silver cloud behind them. What do you do when you are at home? Called Randy as Kabumpo, giving two short trumpets, followed close on the heels of the Thunder Colt. Home? Planety turned a frankly puzzled face. I mean, do you have a house or a castle? Persisted Randy, determined to have the matter settled in his mind once for all. Do you have brothers and sisters, and is your father a king? No house, no castle, no those other words, answered Planety in even greater bewilderment. On another planet, each is to herself or himself alone. One floats, rides, skips or drifts through the leadling heights and lowlands, hanging the cape where one happens to be. Regular gypsies, murmured Kabumpo under his breath. So nobody belongs to nobody, and nobody has anybody. Sounds kinda crazy to me. Yes, if you have no families, no fathers or mothers. Randy was plainly distressed by such a country and existence. I don't see how you came to be at all. We rise full grown from our vanadium springs, and naturally I have my own spring. Is that, then, my father? Tell her yes, hissed Kabumpo between his tusks. Why, mix her all up with our way of doing things. If she wants a spring for a father, let her have it. Kabumpo waved his trunk largely. Ho, ho, Karumph. I've always thought of springs as a cure for rheumatism, but live and learn. Hey, Randy, live and learn. Randy paid small attention to the elegant elephant's asides. He was too busy explaining life as it was lived in Oz to Planety, making it all so bright and fascinating. The eyes of the little princess fairly sparkled with interest and envy. I think I will not go with you to this Wizard of Ev, she announced in a small voice as the young king paused for breath. I do not believe I shall like that old wizard or his castle. Touching Thun with her staff, Planety turned the Thunder Colt sideways and went zigzagging so rapidly through the trees they almost lost sight of her entirely. Now what? Stormed the elegant elephant, charging recklessly after her through the forest. What's come over the little netwit? Come back, you foolish girl, he trumpeted anxiously. We'll take you to Oz after you've been to Ev, he added with a sudden burst of comprehension. At Kabumpo's promise, Planety half turned on her charger. "But this Wizard of Ev will send us back to another planet. It is yourself that has said so." "No, no, we just said he would help you," shouted Randy, leaning forward and waving both arms for Planety to turn back. "Oh, you really must see Jinnicky," he begged earnestly. "Without his magic, you cannot live away from that vanadium spring. Do you want to be stiff and still as a statue for the rest of your days?" "I'd rather be a statue down here with you and Bumpo, where the birds sing and the flowers grow and the woods are green and wonderful, than to be a live princess of another planet," sighed the Metal Maiden, hiding her face in Thun's mane. "You would?" cried Randy, almost falling off the elephant in his extreme joy and excitement. "Then you just shall, and Jinnicky will change everything so you can live down here always and come back to Oz with Kabumpo and me. Would you like that, Planety? Oh, that would be netiful." Clasping Thun with both arms, the little princess laid her soft cheek against his neck. "Netiful." "Then ride on, princess, ride on," Kabumpo spoke gruffly, for his feelings had quite overcome him. "Toss me a kerchief, will you, Randy?" he gulped desperately. "Oh, boo-hoo, curse, Nif. To think she really likes us that much. Do you think she'd hear if I blew my trunk?" "No, no, she's way ahead of us now," whispered Randy, handing an enormous handkerchief down to Kabumpo after taking a sly wipe on it himself. "Oh, isn't this a gorgeous day, Kabumpo? And isn't everything turning out splendidly? And see there, we've actually come to the end of the forest." Chapter 11. The Field of Feathers. "Good gapers, everything's pink," marveled Randy as Kabumpo, still muttering and snuffling, pushed his way through the last fringe of the forest. "So now we're in the pink, eh?" With a last convulsive snort, Kabumpo stuffed the handkerchief into a lower pocket and trumpeted 3 times for Thun to halt. "Are those flowers, d'ye s'pose?" "May I see one of them, my dear?" Catching up with the little princess, who was already on the edge of the field, Kabumpo took the long spray she had picked and passed it back to Randy. "My gooseness, it's a feather, the largest and finest I've ever seen," Randy said in surprise. "Hey, I always thought feathers grew on birds, yet here's a whole field of feathers. Kabumpo. Imagine that, and taller than I am, too." "Well, there's no harm in feathers," observed Kabumpo jocularly. "Pick a plume for your bonnet, my child. The girls in our countries adorn themselves with these pretty fripperies. I've even worn them myself at court functions," he admitted self-consciously. "But do you think you can hold the colt's head up as we go through? Burnt feathers smell rather awful, and we don't wish to anger the owner or spoil his crop." A bit confused by the word owner and crop, Planety nevertheless caught the idea and explained it so cleverly to Thun. The Thundercolt started through the field, holding his head high and handsome so that the flames spurted upward and not down. It was rather like plowing through a wheat field, decided Randy as Kabumpo, treading lightly as he could, stepped after Thun. It was, though, more like a sea of waving plumes, endlessly bending, nodding, and rippling in the wind. Planety gathered armfuls of these bright and newest treasures, liking them almost as much as the flowers in the forest. Thun, for his part, found the whole experience irksome in the extreme. "These pink feathers give me the big pain in the neck," he puffed up indignantly as he trotted along with his head in the air. Planety, reading his message with a little smile, was astonished to hear a series of roars and explosions behind her. Surely Thun's remarks were not as funny as all that. Turning round, she was shocked to see Kabumpo swaying and stumbling in his tracks, coughing and spluttering, and torn by such gigantic guffaws he had already shaken Randy from his back. The young king himself rolled and twisted on the ground, fairly gasping for breath. "It's the feathers!" he gasped weakly as Planety, leaping off the Thundercolt, ran back to investigate. They're tickling us to death. Get away quickly, Nettie dear, before they get you. Oh, ha 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 ha. Oh, ho ho ho, quick, before it is too late. Oh, hi hi hi. I shall die laughing. To the startled little princess, he appeared to be dying already. No, no, please not, she cried, dropping her armful of feathers. With surprising strength, she jerked Randy upright and, in spite of his continued roars and wild writhing, managed to fling him across Thun's back. Now Kabumpo was down, kicking and rolling hysterically. It seemed to Planety that the feathers were wickedly alive and tickling them on purpose. They tossed, swayed, and brushed against her and Thun too, but having no effect on the metallic skin of the Nuthers, curled away in distaste. "Stop! Stop! I hate you!" screamed Planety, stamping on the bunch she had picked a moment before, then struggling in vain to pull Kabumpo up by his trunk. "Thun, Thun, what shall we do?" Racing back to the Thunder Colt, Planety tapped out all that was happening to their best and only friends, holding the convulsed and still laughing Randy in place with one hand as she did so. Thun, from anxious glances over his shoulder, had guessed more than half the difficulty. "Search in the Kabumpty's pocket for something to tie round him so I may pull him out of the feathers," flashed the Thunder Colt, swinging in a circle to prance and stamp on the plumes still curling down to tickle the helpless boy on his back. Feeling in Kabumpo's pockets as he tossed and lashed about was hard enough, but Planety, who was quick and clever, soon found a long, stout, heavily linked gold chain Kabumpo twisted round and round his neck on important occasions. Slipping the chain through his belt, the little princess clasped the other ends round the Thunder Colt's chest, making a strong and splendid harness. Then, mounting quickly and holding desperately to Randy, Planety gave the signal for Thun to start. And away through the deadly field charged the night-black steed, burning feathers left and right with his flashing breath and dragging Kabumpo along as easily as if he had been a sack of potatoes instead of a 2-ton elephant. The feathers bending beneath made the going soft so that the elegant elephant did not suffer so much as a scratch, and Thun galloped so swiftly that in less than 10 minutes they had reached the other side of the beautiful but treacherous field. Going half a mile beyond, Thun came to an anxious halt, the golden chain falling slack around his ankles, while Planety jumped down to see how Kabumpo was doing now. The elegant elephant had stopped laughing, but his eyes still rolled and his muscles still twitched and rippled from the terrible tickling he had endured. Randy, exhausted and weak, hung like a dummy stuffed with straw over the Thunder Colt's back. "Oh, we were too late, too long," mourned Planety, wringing her hands and running distractedly between the elegant elephant and the insensible king. "Oh, my netness, they will become stiff and still as Nuthers deprived of their springs," she tapped out dolefully to Thun. "Do not be too sure." The Thunder Colt puffed out his message slowly. "See, already the big Kabumpty is trying to rise." And such indeed was the case. Astonished and mortified to find himself stretched on the ground in broad daylight and still too confused to realize what had happened, the elegant elephant lurched to his feet and stood blinking uncertainly around. Then, his eyes suddenly coming into proper focus, he caught sight of Randy lying limply across the Thunder Colt. "What in Oz, what in Ix, what in Eve is the matter here?" he panted, wobbling dizzily over to Thun. "Feathers!" sighed Planety, clasping both arms round Kabumpo's trunk and beginning to pat and smooth its wrinkled surface. "The feathers tickled you and you fell down, my poor Bumpo." Randy, too, was almost laughed to the death. "What does death mean?" Planety looked up anxiously into his eyes. "Great Grump, so that was it. Great Gillikins. I remember now, we were both nearly tickled to death, and it was awful. A-W-F-U. Not that Ozians ever do die," he explained hastily, "but after all, we are not in Oz, and anything might have happened. And what I'd like to know is how in Eve we ever got out of those feathers." "Thun pulled you out," Planety told him proudly. And look, Bumpo dear, Randy is going to waken too. Randy, Randy, do you hear that? Kabumpo lifted the young king down and shook him gently backward and forward. This colt of Planetes, this thunder colt, all by himself, mind you, pulled us out of that inferno feather field. You and me, but mostly me. Now tell me, how did he manage to pull an elephant all that way? Randy, only half comprehending what Kabumpo was saying, said nothing, but Thun, guessing Kabumpo's question, threw back his head and puffed quickly. We Nothers are strong as iron, master. Strong for ourselves, strong for our friends. Thun, the Thunder Colt, will always be strong for Kabumpty. Strong, strong. Why, you're marvelous, gasped the elegant elephant. Placing Randy on the ground, he fished jewels from his pocket with a reckless trunk till he found a band of pearls to fit Thun. Then, carelessly risking the sparks from the Thunder Colt's nostrils, he fastened the pearls in place. Tell him, thanks, he blurted out breathlessly. Tell him from now on we are friends and equals, friends and warriors together. With a pleased nod, Planety translated for Thun, and the delighted colt, tossing his flying mane, raced round and round his three comrades, filling the air with high-flown and flaming sentences. Friends and warriors, he heralded, rearing joyously. Friends and warriors. By this time, Randy had recovered his breath and his memory and felt not only able but impatient to continue the journey. The field of feathers could still be seen waving pink and provokingly in the distance, but without one backward glance the four travelers set their faces to the north. A few of Chillywalla's boxes had been crushed while Kabumpo rolled in the feathers, and he and Randy still felt weak and worn from their dreadful experience, but these were small matters when they considered the dreadful fate they had escaped through the quick action of Planety and Thun. I always thought of Ix as a pleasant country, sighed Randy as Kabumpo moved slowly along a shady bypath. I don't believe this is Ix, stated the elegant elephant bluntly. The air's different, smells salty, and this sandy road looks as if we might be near the sea. I think myself that we've come north by east through Ix into Ev and will reach the Nonestic Ocean by evening. Kabumpo paused to peer up at a rough board nailed to a pine. So, you got through the feathers, did you? Sneered the notice in threatening red letters. Then so much the worse for you. Beware. Watch out. Gludwig the Glubrious has his eye on you. Glubrious, sniffed Kabumpo, elevating his trunk scornfully as Randy read and reread the impertinent message. I don't recall anyone named Gludwig, do you? Sounds rather awful, doesn't it? Whispered Randy, sliding to the ground to examine the billboard from all sides. Say, look here, Kabumpo, there's something on the back. It's been scratched out with red chalk, but I can still read it. Then read it, advised Kabumpo briefly. This is the land of Ev. Everybody welcome. Take this road to the castle of the Red Djinn. Oh, that means we're almost there, exulted the young king, but his joy evaporated quickly as he reread the other side of the board. Looks as if someone had switched signs on Jinnicky, he muttered, pushing back his crown with a little whistle. Do you think anything has happened to him? Probably some mischievous country boy trying out his chalk, answered the elegant elephant, not believing one of his own words. Straight on, my dear, he called cheerfully to Planety, who had pulled in the colt and was looking questioningly back at them. At last we are in the land of Eve, and just ahead lies the castle of our wizard. Oh, Bumpo, how nitty! Planety hugged herself from pure joy. I've never seen a castle. I've never seen a wizard. But, Kabumpo, worried Randy as the little princess of another planet galloped gaily ahead of them. Suppose this Gludwig really has his eye on us. Suppose he rushes out before we can reach Jinnicky's castle? Well, that will not be very nice, will it? The elegant elephant spoke ruefully. But what can we do? Are we going to stop for a mere sign? No, declared Randy, feeling about for his sword. Of course not, but I'll wager a Willikin he was the fellow who planted those feathers. Very likely, agreed Kabumpo, pushing grimly along through the sand. Chapter 12. Arrival at the Castle of the Red Djinn. The further they traveled into Ev, the more interesting the country became to Planety and Thun. Now wild orange and lemon trees added their spicy tang to the salty air, waving palms edged the sandy roadway, and after traversing a grove of lordly coconut trees, the four suddenly found themselves facing the great, green, rolling non-nestic. A spring! Caroled Planety, galloping Thun down to the water's edge. Oh, never have I seen so netiful a spring. Not a spring, princess, an ocean, corrected Kabumpo, ambling good-naturedly after Thun. This is a salt, salt sea, full of ships, sailors, shells, crabs, islands, fish, and fishermen. And will I see all of them? Slipping from Thun's back, Planety waded out a little way, hopping gleefully over the edges of the smaller waves. "Sometime," promised Randy, dismounting hastily to keep her from venturing too far. "Look over your shoulder, Nettie," he urged, drawing her back toward shore, "and then tell me what you think." Explaining this gay, wide, and wonderful world to the little princess of another planet, Randy found more fun than anything he had ever done or imagined. Tense with expectation, he and Kabumpo watched as Planety gazed off to the right. "Why, 'tis a high, high hill of red that glitters, or what? What is it?" Planety whirled Thun round so he could see too. "It's a castle, m'lass." Kabumpo swaggered down the beach, as if he alone were responsible for all its splendor and magnificence. "There you see the imperial palace of the Wizard of Ev, built from turret to cellar of finest red glass studded with rubies, and there, this night, we will be suitably entertained by Jinnicky himself." "The inside's even better than the outside," Randy whispered in Planety's ear, as she tapped out this astonishing news to the Thunder Colt. Come on, it's not more than a mile, and we can go straight along the edge of the seashore. Say, weren't we lucky not to run into Gludwig?" Pulling himself up on Kabumpo's back, Randy spoke the words softly. It would have been too bad to have the first person outside of ourselves that Planety met turn out a villain. "I believe that's sign WAS, a joke." "Well, everything seems all right so far," admitted the elegant elephant guardedly. "But keep your eyes open, my boy. Keep your eyes open. Is that a welcome committee marching along the beach, or is it an army?" "They're still too far away to tell," answered Randy. "Looks to me like all Jinnicky's blacks. I can see their baggy red trousers and turbans." "Yes, but what's that gleaming in the sunlight?" demanded Kabumpo, curling up his trunk uneasily. "Only their scimitars," Randy said, standing up to have a better view. "Each man is carrying a scimitar over his shoulder, but that's perfectly all right. They're probably parading for our benefit." "Sometimes things are not what they scimitar," sniffed Kabumpo, snapping his eyes suspiciously. But Randy, paying no attention to the elegant elephant's remark, was feeling round in the net bags for Chillywalla's bandbox, and next moment the lively strains of a military march filled the air. Swinging along in time to the music, Kabumpo peered sharply at the oncoming host for signs of Ali Babel or Ginger, the slave of the bell, or some of Jinnicky's other old and trusted counselors. But in all that great throng there was no one familiar face, and because he was beginning to feel more than a bit worried, Kabumpo lifted his feet higher and higher. "Everything looks black, very black," he muttered dubiously. "Why not?" cried Randy, waving his arms like a bandmaster. "They're all as black as the ace of spades. Mind you, Planety, it takes all these black men to take care of Jinnicky and his castle." "And will they take care of us?" Planety eyed the marchers with positive amazement and alarm. "So many," she murmured in a hushed voice. "So black. I thought everyone down here would be like you and Bumpo." "My, no," Randy told her complacently. "Everyone is liable to be different. I believe I'll toss out some of Chiliwalla's boxes. Visitors should come bearing presents, you know." Hastily, Randy began pulling out boxes of candy, boxes of cigarettes, beads, cigars, and whole suits of clothing to dazzle Jinniky's subjects. But when the leader of the procession came within 10 feet of the travelers, he threw back his head and emitted such a blood-curdling howl, Randy's hair rose on his head. And as the rest of the blacks, brandishing scimitars and yelling threats and imprecations, came leaping toward them, the desperate young king began hurling down boxes as if they were bombs. He caught the headman on the chin with the bandbox, but while it stopped the music, it did not stop the gigantic Evian from slashing at Thun. As his scimitar fell, Kabumpo gave a trumpet that felled the whole front rank of the enemy, and snatching up the villain in his trunk, he hurled him back among his men. Is this taking care of us?" shuddered Planety, clasping her arms round the neck of the plunging Thundercolt. "No, no, my goodness, no! Is Thun hurt? Quick, Kabumpo!" screamed Randy as a second scimitar slashed down on Thun's flank. Then he managed to breathe again, for the razor-sharp weapon glanced harmlessly off the metal coat of Planety's coal-black charger. The wielder of the scimitar, however, did not escape so easily, for a hot blast from Thun's nostrils sent him reeling backward. "That's it! Give it to them! Give it to them!" shouted Randy, forgetting in his excitement that Thun could not hear, and he himself hurled Chiliwalla's boxes hard and viciously, and one after the other. As for Kabumpo, every time he raised his trunk there was a black man in it, and as fast as they came he slung them over his shoulder. But it was Planety who really turned the tide of battle. While Randy, who had exhausted his supply of boxes, was digging desperately in Kabumpo's pockets for some more missiles, he heard a perfect chorus of terrified screeches. Popping up with an umbrella and an alarm clock, he saw the princess of another planet standing erect on the galloping colt's back, calmly and precisely casting her staff at the foe. Each time the staff struck, the victim, in whatever attitude he happened to be, was frozen into a motionless metal figure. After each stroke, the staff returned to Planety's hand. Yeah, master," wailed the frantic blacks who were still able to move, and tumbling over one another in their effort to escape, they fled wildly back to the Red Castle, leaving behind 60 of their vanquished brethren. You 100 be sorry for this," shouted the headman, tearing off his turban and waving it as he ran. "So will you," bellowed Kabumpo fiercely. "Just wait till Jinniky hears about this. How dare you treat his visitors in this violent, wicked fashion?" "Jinniky, Jinniky," jeered the headman as Planety aimed her staff threateningly at his back. "Jinniky is at the bottom of the sea. Groaned the elegant elephant as the headman reached the palace and cittered wildly up the glass steps. "I knew something was wrong the moment I saw those scimitars. Jinniky gone, Jinniky at the bottom of the sea. Why, I just can't believe it." Randy, glancing over his shoulder at the tumbling nonestic, looked almost ready to cry. Then putting back his shoulders, he declared fiercely, "Well, I'm not going off and leave this old pirate in Jinniky's castle, are you? It must be Gludwig's doing, all this. Let's go inside and throw him out of there. We have lots of help now. Thun's a regular flamethrower, and Planety's worth a whole army, and best of all, nothing can hurt them. Why didn't you tell me you had a magic staff?" Randy looked admiringly down at the resolute little princess at his side. "Why, with that staff we can conquer anybody." "Is that what you call the magic?" Planety regarded her staff with new interest. "It certainly is," panted Kabumpo, fanning himself with a handy palm leaf. "And we're mighty sorry to have gotten you into all this danger and trouble, my dear. Looks as if we had a war on our hands instead of a pleasant vacation." "Oh, that, it is nothing, nothing." Planetti shrugged her shoulders eloquently. "On our planet, we too have the bad beasts and noothers, and when they try to hit or bite us, we just subdue them with our voral staffs. So I see." Kabumpo, still fanning himself, looked thoughtfully at Gludwig's petrified warriors. "There must be a goodly bit of statuary on your planet, m'lass." "Very many," answered Planetti soberly, polishing her staff on the end of her cape. With a slight shudder, the elegant elephant turned from the fallen slaves, resolving then and there never to offend this pretty but powerful little metal maiden. "Well, have the scoundrels dispersed and gone for good?" inquired Thun, sending up his question in a cloud of black smoke. Restively pawing the ground, the Thunder Colt looked from one to the other, waiting for someone to enlighten him. "Tell 'em they've gone, but for nobody's good," wheezed Kabumpo, who was still out of breath from the violence of the combat. "Tell him Gludwig, the Glubrious, has destroyed the Wizard of Ev, and that we are now going into the castle to continue the battle." "But where shall we start?" sighed Randy, staring despondently up at the gay red palace where he and Kabumpo had been so royally entertained on their last visit. "We'll start at the bottom of these steps," announced Kabumpo grimly, "and mount on up to the top. Then we'll burst into the presence of this wretched wart and fling him out of the window." "But that won't help Jinnicky if he's at the bottom of the sea," mourned Randy, trying to smile at Planetti, who was busily tapping off instructions to Thun. "Ha! But don't forget, Jinnicky's a wizard," sniffed Kabumpo, pulling in his belt a few inches, "and nobody can keep a good wizard down. Besides," Kabumpo dragged his robe a bit to the left and straightened his headpiece, "once inside that castle, we can use some of the Red Jinn's own magic to help him." "Magic? Why, of course, I'd forgotten about that." Randy's face cleared and brightened, and seeing Planetti and Thun so eager and unafraid beside him, he girded on his sword and, standing upright on Kabumpo's back, gave the signal to start. As they trod up the 100 red glass steps, they could hear windows and doors slamming, the patter of running feet and the tinkle of the 100 glass chimes in the tower. But step by step, and without a pause, Thun and Kabumpo mounted to the top. "Beware, beware, Gludwig the Glubrious! Here march Kabumpty and Thun, Slandy and Planetti, princess of another planet, friends, equals, and warriors." The Thundercoat's flaming message, floating like a battle emblem in the air, alarmed the wicked occupant of Jinnicky's castle even more than the invaders themselves. But still confident of his power to vanquish all comers, he waited in evil anticipation for the moment when they would force their way into his presence. Did they imagine because they had frightened a company of foolish slaves they could frighten him? Ha ha! Crouched on the Red Jinn's throne and laughing mirthlessly, Gludwig rubbed his long hands up and down his skinny knees. Chapter 13. Gludwig the Glubrious. "Psst, wait, hold on a minute." As they reached the huge double doors of the Red Castle, Randy tugged violently at Kabumpo's left ear, for the elegant elephant, all humped together, was preparing to bump through. "Let Thun break down the door," directed the young king firmly. "Thun is of metal, and the glass will not cut him then. As soon as there is an opening, we can follow. Will you tell him, Planetti?" Randy looked fondly down at the earnest little princess. "And as soon as we are inside," he went on hurriedly, "fling your staff at the first person I point out to you." "That I will," promised Planetti with a brief nod, and giving Thun his orders, she galloped the Thundercolt straight at the glass doors. With a crash like the fall of 100 trays of dishes, the glass doors shivered to bits. Rushing through the flying splinters, Kabumpo and Thun raced together into the palace. How well Randy remembered this cozy throne room, its transparent red glass pillars and floors, its gay red lacquered furniture, its tinkling curtains of strung rubies, and the long line of enormous red vases leading up to the throne. But instead of the jolly little djinn, encased in his own shining jar, a long, lank black man in a red wig lounged on the seat of state. He was smoking a tenuous red pipe, and, as Kabumpo and Thun came to an abrupt halt before him, he blinked wickedly out from under his bushy red lashes. Besides the red-wigged impostor, Randy noted with some relief, there was not another soul in sight. "Well," demanded Gludwig insolently, "what do you hope to accomplish by this unwarranted intrusion?" Taking his pipe out of his mouth, he blew a cloud of villainous black smoke into the faces of his visitors. So thick and sulphurous were the fumes, Randy and Kabumpo were rendered speechless. While they choked and spluttered, Planety, who did not seem aware of the smoke at all, gazed in wide-eyed delight around her. So this was a castle. How night, how netiful! Lost in wonder and admiration, the little princess forgot all about the stern purpose of their visit. Off that throne, you wart!" rasped Kabumpo, clearing his throat with an ear-splitting trumpet. "What have you done with Jinnicky? You're no more a wizard than I am. You're as false and crooked as your wig. Down with him! Down with him, Randy! Let him repent of his wickedness in uttermost disgrace and debasement." "So my downfall is the little plan?" Speaking calmly but trembling with fury at Kabumpo's taunting speech, Gludwig rose. At the same instant, Randy, recovering his breath, called desperately, "Now, Planety, your staff. Throw it straight at him. Oh, quickly!" Thun's hot breath was already singeing Gludwig's ankles, and, leaping over the throne, he crouched down like a great black panther behind it. "Ha! Ha!" he shouted again. "My downfall and debasement, is it? Well, try a bit of downfalling and debasement yourselves." Just as Planety, taking careful aim, hurled her gleaming staff, Gludwig pulled a tremendous lever in the wall beside him. Instantly, the floor on the other side of the throne dropped down, slanting Kabumpo, Thun, and both riders into the dark, damp, and long unused cellar of the castle. "A trap-door!" raged the elegant elephant, coming down like a carload of bricks. "A trap floor, you mean?" gasped Randy, picking himself up with a painful grimace, for the jolt had sent him flying off the elephant. Thun had retained his balance, and neither he nor Planety seemed to mind the force of their landing. As they gazed angrily upward, the floor of the throne room swung noiselessly back into place, leaving the four prisoners to contemplate the heavy glass beams and panels of its underside. "So that was the downfall, and this is debasement," grunted Kabumpo, sitting down furiously on an overturned washtub. "Great Grump, I've never been so humiliated in my life." "Don't cry, Planety," he begged gruffly. "We'll have you out of here in a pig's whistle. It's not that, Bumpo dear." Planety buried her face in Thun's cloudy mane and sobbed bitterly. "It's my staff. It did not return after I flung it at the red-wigged one, and without it I have nothing. Nothing!" "Good Gollopers!" Randy clapped his hand to his forehead as he realized the awful significance of Planety's disclosure. The floor tilted too quickly for it to return, and, "Oh, Cob-umpo!" he wailed, almost forgetting he was a king and warrior. "If Gludwig has that staff, what can we do? He can come down here and petrify us any time he wants." "We'll hide," gulped Kabumpo, bounding off the washtub. With furious concentration, his small eyes roved round and round their gloomy prison. "But you're so big," declared Randy, running over to comfort Planety. "I'll hide anyway," said Kabumpo, who had no intention of spending the rest of his life as an iron elephant, nor of adorning the palace of Gludwig the Glubrious as the mere image of himself. Chapter 14. The Slave of the Magic Dinner Bell. How thankful Randy and Kabumpo were now for the Thunder Colt's fiery breath. Otherwise, they would have been in almost complete darkness, as scarcely any light at all trickled down through the dark red glass of the cellar windows. And there was small danger of his setting Jinnicky's castle on fire, for the basement, like the rest of the palace, was constructed of thick plates of solid glass. But here below, the glass was not bright and sparkling as it was above stairs. Cobwebs clung to the glass beams, dust powdered the floors, and round the walls in boxes and barrels stood the old or worn-out magic appliances of the Red Djinn. There was no furnace in the cellar, for the castle was warmed in winter by a magic process of Jinnicky's own invention, and there were no doors, not even a closet or cupboard where any of them could hide. With Thun stepping ahead to act as a torch, the others marched anxiously round the great gloomy vault-like apartment. No place to hide, no provisions, nothing to eat or drink. "Nothing!" exclaimed the elegant elephant, sinking down on the washtub. "That is, nothing to do but wait for destruction," he concluded bitterly. "Well, we're not destroyed yet," declared Randy, sticking out his chin. "Everything seems quiet above. Maybe Gludwig is not going to use Planety's staff till morning." With a discouraged sniff, Kabumpo began poking in the boxes behind him. Finding one full of excelsior, he started to stuff the choking material into his mouth with his trunk. Randy was sure the excelsior would disagree with him, but when Kabumpo was in such a mood, it was quite useless to argue with him. So, beckoning for Thun to light the way, he and Planety set out on a second tour of investigation. Randy paused dubiously before a collection of squat bottles and jugs. He was convinced they contained liquids or vapors powerful enough to help them, but the directions on the labels were all in some strange magician's code, and Randy hesitated to open even one of the magic bottles. Experience had taught him that a wizard's wares were dangerous, and he himself had seen the Red Djinn subdue whole armies by releasing incense from a blue jug. So, selecting 2 pocket-sized jars, to use only in case everything else failed, Randy moved on to the other side of the cellar. Here, on top of a chest, he discovered a small red handbag. Instead of the usual fastenings, 2 real hands formed the clasp, and when Randy opened the bag, it quickly jerked out of his grasp and began springing all over the cellar on its hands, pouncing gleefully on papers and bottles and stuffing them into its side pockets. It did look so comical, Planety burst into a peal of merriment. Even Randy could not keep back a grin. It was a relief to see the little princess more like herself again, for since the loss of her Voral staff she had been unnaturally quiet and sad. "Wait, I'll catch it for you," offered Randy, dismissing for a moment all thought of the dreadful danger they were in. "It must be one of Jinnicky's inventions. Look, Kabumpo, a bag that really packs itself." "Watch out it doesn't pinch you," warned Kabumpo morosely. He had already begun to regret the excelsior and was rumbling with indigestion. "I was never one to hold with hand luggage myself." "Oh, yes, you were," crowed Randy, falling on the bag as if it had been a football and coming up triumphantly with it clutched to his middle. "You use your trunk for a hand, Kabumpo, and doesn't that make it hand luggage? Hey, hey, hooray! Never thought I'd make a joke in this dismal place." "It's a pretty dismal joke, if you ask me." The elegant elephant heaved himself stiffly off the washtub. "Keep it away from me," he warned crossly, as Randy, paying no attention to the thumps of the handbag, managed to get it shut again. As soon as it was closed, the bag subsided and seemed absolutely unalive. "Here," puffed Randy, holding it out to Planety. "This bag will pack itself, madam, and you can use it every time you go on a journey." "Can I? How nite!" Planety beamed at her young companion. "Well, who's going on a journey?" inquired Kabumpo sarcastically, walking up and down to relieve his indigestion. "We'll probably spend the rest of our unnatural lives in this abominable basement." "Say something, can't you?" he shouted, glaring at poor Thun. "I can hardly see where I'm going." As fast as Planety translated this rude speech, the Thundercoat sent up his answer. "If I said all the words I am thinking," puffed Thun temperishly, "this room would be very red bright, Mr. Kabumpty, very red bright indeed." The Thundercoat's speech and his further remarks made Randy and Planety laugh again. "Let's see what else we can find," proposed the young king. In spite of Kabumpo's gloomy predictions, he was feeling more hopeful. "Maybe this time we'll turn up something we can really use." "Oh, maybe yes, trilled Planety, slipping swiftly as quicksilver after Randy. Passing by some dusty apparatus and an old spinning wheel, they discovered a huge red drum behind a pile of old trunks. The sticks were stuck through a cord in the side, and it was so heavy that the two between them could hardly carry it. But giggling and puffing, they dragged it into the center of the cellar and dropped it down before Kabumpo. "See what we have now." Dusting off his clothes, Randy surveyed it proudly. Humph, a drum. The elegant elephant moved his ears forward and then back. "Well, what grumpy use is a drum? Am I in a parade? Do you expect me to beat it? Beat the drum." Planety looked surprised and shocked. "Is that for what a drum is for, Bumpo dear? Well, yes, in a way." A bit ashamed of himself, Kabumpo drew out one of the sticks. "It goes like this," he said, raising the drumstick high in his trunk. "Oh no, Kabumpo, N.O. Don't do that, or you'll have Gludwig down here. It would make too much noise." "What if it does?" Kabumpo shrugged his great shoulders. "We may as well perish now as tomorrow. I'm perishing of hunger anyway." Before Randy could interfere, he brought the drumstick down with a thump that split the taut surface of the drum from edge to edge. The loud rip and bong made the rafters ring, and scarcely had they recovered from that shock before a small black boy in an enormous turban sprang out of the drum itself and began sobbing and spluttering and hugging Kabumpo as if he never would let him go. "Good Gillikins, it's Ginger," panted Randy as Planety caught him anxiously by the sleeve. "It's the slave of the magic dinner bell. He can bring us dinners and whatever one wants when Jinnicky rings for him. Hi, who shut you up in that drum, boy?" "That big old red wig," sniffed Ginger, drying his tears on Kabumpo's robe. "Oh, how can I ever thank you, Mr. Elephant? So elegant. I remember you. I remember him." The bellboy jerked his thumb delightedly at Randy. "And many times I thank you. 50 times 11 I thank you. You see, if I am shut up in a drum, it is impossible for me to answer the master's ring if he needs me. And he needs me now. I know it, I know it." "But how can he call you unless he has the dinner bell?" asked Randy, edging closer. "Did Jinnicky take the bell with him when—" To save himself, Randy could not finish the dismal sentence. "When Gludwig pushed him into the sea, you mean?" Ginger's brown face puckered up again. But, controlling his sobs with a great effort, he sat down on the edge of the drum and told them the whole story of Jinnicky's mischance and misfortunes. "The master, as you know," explained Ginger, his eyes rolling sideways as he caught sight of Planety and Thun, whose like he had never seen in his entire magic existence. "The master is always kind and jolly and unsuspecting. This Gludwig was the manager of our ruby mines and one of Jinnicky's most trusted officers. But all the time, this viper, this snake, this villainous black snake—" Ginger clenched his fists and kicked his heels angrily against the drum. "Was planning to steal our Red Jinn's throne and magic in addition to his own splendid mansion and fortune. One evening, 7 moons ago, having trained his miners into an army of rebellion, Gludwig marched upon our castle and drove everybody out."
"Everybody?"
The elegant elephant, picking Ginger up in his trunk, looked earnestly into his face. "Every EV body," repeated the little bellboy, wagging his turban sorrowfully. Ali Babo, the Grand Advisor, all the members of the court and household were sent to the mines under the cruel rule of Glubdo, Gludwig's brother, and they are there now, working without rest, hope, or reward. He marched the master to the head of the highest cliff and pushed him violently into the sea with his OWN hands. Ginger began to tremble with grief and anger at the memory of it all. He ordered the bandsman to seal me up in this drum, knowing a drum is the only place from which I cannot escape, and hoping I would shrivel up and perish. "But I," asserted the little black triumphantly, "I am the best part of Jinnicky's magic, so he couldn't destroy me." A quick grin overspread Ginger's face. "And he could not destroy my master either. Of that I am sure, and now that the elephant so elegant has let me out, now—"
Now what?
breathed Randy, almost afraid Ginger was not going to tell him. "You see, Ginger, we came to visit the Red Djinn and were immediately captured and dumped down here ourselves. So how can we get out, and what can we do?" "I will think of something," promised the bellboy. Wriggling out of Kabumpo's trunk, he scurried across the cellar and disappeared beneath an overturned wheelbarrow. "So, he will think of something," sniffed Kabumpo, trying not to make it sound too sarcastic. "Well, of course, that settles it. And while he is thinking, I intend to take a nap. I'm completely worn out with all these vile plots and villainies. I, too, will ret," decided Planety, reaching over to pat the Thundercoat. The strange excitements of the day had wearied the little princess, and this last story of Ginger's had still further puzzled and distressed her. "I never thought when I brought you here you'd have to sleep in a place like this," groaned Randy, glancing ruefully round the dingy basement. "Oh, it's not so bad," smiled the little princess. Slipping off her cape, she swung it casually between two grimy pillars, and with the handbag tucked under her arm, climbed contentedly into her silver bed. "Good night, Randy and Bumpo, dear," she called softly. "I believe I shall ret for a long, long time." "Now what does she mean by that?" worried the young king, as the princess blew them each a wistful kiss. "Something's wrong, Kabumpo. I feel it. And look there at Thun. Why is he acting so strangely?" Almost as if he could not see. Look at him," wailed the elegant elephant. "Where is he? How can I? It's dark as thunder in here now." "Great Grump, Randy, I can't see you. Him or anything at all." Stumbling and tripping, he somehow crossed the cellar to the spot where he remembered Thun had been. Then, as his trunk struck against hard, cold metal, he recoiled in horror. "He's O.U.T.," moaned the elegant elephant hoarsely. "He's not even breathing. Why, he's cold and stiff as a stone. Oh, good Grump, the coat saved my life, and now what can I do for him?" "What'll we do, Randy? I say, what'll we do?" Randy had no answer at all, for, moved by a dreadful foreboding, he leaned down to touch the face of the little princess of another planet, only to find it still and cold. No sparkling light radiated from Planety now, as, quiet and motionless as a statue, she lay wrapped in her silver nets. "Ginger, where are you? Ginger, come help us!" Randy screamed desperately. Scrambling out from under the barrow, the startled bellboy reached Randy's side in a split second, for Ginger could see as well in the dark as in the daytime.
Did
Gludwig do this?" he panted, his eyes rolling wildly from Planety to the frozen Thundercoat. "No, no, they are far from their own country and need the powerful vanadium springs," groaned Kabumpo, putting out his trunk to touch the little princess. "They cannot exist down here. And with Jinnicky gone, who's to help them?" His tears fell thick and fast on Planety's silver tresses. "Then why do we stay here?" shuddered Ginger, tugging at Randy's cloak and Kabumpo's robe. Why do we stay?" As if to answer Ginger's mournful cry, there was a long whistling rustle in the air, and next moment Randy, Ginger, Kabumpo, and the princess of another planet were wafted like feathers through the night, passing easily as mist through the narrow glass windows, up over the castle itself and out over the silvery moonlit sea. Chapter 15. Non-Agon Island. The same afternoon the four travelers arrived at the Red Jinn's castle. A lonely fisherman in an odd nine-sided dory pulled out from the Non-Agon Isle. This strange, small nine-sided island lies about 90 leagues from the mainland of Ev. Flat, barren, and rocky, it affords but a meager living to the 9 fishermen who are its sole inhabitants. Each keeps strictly to his own side of the island, subsisting frugally on fish and the few poor vegetables he can grow in his rocky little garden. Hard and unfriendly as their island itself, the 9 non-Agons go their own ways, exchanging brief nods on the rare occasions when they meet one another. The habit of silence had so grown upon Bluff, the fisherman in the 9-sided dory, he did not even talk to the cat who shared his rough dwelling and accompanied him on all of his fishing trips. And so accustomed was poor Nina to her gruff and taciturn master that she expected nothing from him but an occasional kick or fish head. Never sure which would be forthcoming, she kept her green eyes watchfully upon him at all times. This afternoon she was certain it would be a fish head, and as Bluff reached the spot where he had set his nets, her tail began to wave gently in pleasant anticipation. Bluff himself seemed a little less grim, for the net seemed quite heavy, and sure he had made a good haul, he began pulling on the lines. But when his net came wet and dripping over the side of the boat, he gave a grunt of anger. In it were only 3 small fish and an immense red jug. His first impulse was to toss the jug back into the sea, but reflecting grumpily that he could use it to salt down fish for the winter, he rolled it into the bottom of the boat and, kicking the disappointed cat out of the way, rowed rapidly back to the island. Stamping into his 9-sided shack with the net over his shoulder, Bluff banged the jug down on the hearth, cleaned and cut up the fish, and popped them into a pot hung on a crane over the fire. Then, lighting his one poor lamp, he sat sullenly down to wait for his supper. The fish heads he flung cruelly into the hot ashes, and whenever he dozed for a moment, Nina tried to pull one out with her paw, for she knew full well she could get nothing else to eat. For perhaps an hour there was not a sound in the fisherman's hut except the crackling of the driftwood in the grate and the hoarse breathing of the fisherman himself. Then suddenly Nina, who had almost succeeded in dragging her supper from the flames, gave a frightened backward leap. "Oh my, mercy me, came a muffled but merry voice. Where am I now?" As Nina and her master turned startled eyes toward the red jug, for the voice was undoubtedly coming from the jug, the lid slowly lifted, and a round, jolly face peered out at them. What he saw was so discouraging, Jinnicky, for of course it was Jinnicky, dropped back out of sight. The magic fluid with which he had sealed himself in the jug before Gludwig hurled him into the sea had been melted by the warmth of the fisherman's fire, and the same warmth had restored the little Red Jinn to his usual vigor and liveliness. In a sort of protective stupor he had managed to survive the long months at the bottom of the ocean. A quick thinker at all times, Jinnicky rapidly regained his senses and realized at once what had happened. A fortunate tide had carried him into this fisherman's net, and at last he was on dry land again, and now to find and face the villain who had usurped his throne and castle. "But why, groaned the little Jinn dolefully. "With all the fishermen in the non-estic ocean, did I have to be pulled out by this long-jawed fellow?" Venturing another look, and at the same time thrusting his arms and legs out of their proper apertures in the jug, he saw that Bluff had seized an oar and seemed about ready to whack it down on his head. Non, my good fellow," puffed Jinnicky, fixing his rescuer with his bright glassy eye. "Put up your oar. This is no battle, and I have much to say that will interest you, but first of all I want to thank you for pulling me out of the ocean. Heartily, heartily. A suitable reward will be sent you as soon as I get back my castle." To this polite speech, Bluff paid no attention whatsoever, but Nina, liking the pleasant voice of this curious visitor, began rubbing herself against his ankles. "I am the Red Djinn of Ev," announced the little wizard, keeping a wary eye on the oar. "At present banished from my castle by the treachery of a trusted officer. In fact," Jinnicky tapped himself smartly on the jug, "this villain actually took everything I had and tossed me into the sea." "What's wrong with the sea?" inquired the fisherman hoarsely. Never having seen anyone in his whole life but the 8 other Nonagon Islanders, Bluff did not really believe what he saw now. "I'm asleep and having a nightmare," he concluded, grasping the oar more determinedly still. And we can hardly blame him, for a fellow whose body is a huge red vase into which he can draw his arms, legs, and head at will is pretty hard for anyone to believe. Realizing he was getting nowhere, and that his grim and dour rescuer cared nothing about his troubles, past or present, Jinnicky decided to try another line. "Perhaps you could tell me the name of this place, and your own name," he murmured politely. "I am Bluff, my cat is Nina, and this is the Nonagon Island," announced the fisherman, frowning at the little wizard. "Ah, 9-sided island." The Red Djinn stretched his arms and hopped up and down to get the kinks out of his legs. "And I see you have a 9-sided cottage and a cat with 9 lives." Picking up poor skinny Nina, who was purring for the first time in her life, Jinnicky stroked her back thoughtfully as he counted the 9 pieces of furniture in the rude hut, noted that it was 9 o'clock and the 9th of May. "But is 9 my lucky number?" he pondered wearily. Could this churlish fisherman ever be persuaded to sail him back to the mainland? Looking at Bluff out of the side of his eye, he very much doubted it. Though Bluff had put down the oar, his manner was anything but cordial. "Are there any other people on the island?" asked Jinnicky, more to keep up the conversation than because he really wanted to know. At his question, Bluff put back his head and in a long sing-song voice drawled, "Bluff, bliff, bliff, bluff, 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 and bloof." "Oh my, mercy me!" At each name, Jinnicky gave a little jump, and as Bluff came to the end of the list, he seated himself gingerly on the edge of the bench and stared into the fire. What could he hope from such people? Then, suddenly, in the midst of his worries, he became aware of the fish chowder bubbling cozily on the crane, and realized at the same instant his enormous and devouring hunger. After all, you know he had not eaten for 7 months. "Ah," he beamed, extending both arms toward his host. "Dinner. My dinner." The 2 words were spoken so gruffly, Jinnicky's heart fell with a loud clunk into his boots. Why, this was unbelievable. He, Jinnicky, the one and only Wizard of Ev, to be flouted and insulted by a miserable fisherman. Well, at least he could leave the fellow's miserable hut and try his luck with the other islanders. Reflecting sadly that a wizard without his magic is no better off than any other man, the Red Djinn slid off the bench and started for the door, trying to walk in a calm and dignified manner. But halfway there, a sharp grunt brought him up short. "Oh, no you don't," rasped Bluff, catching up with him in 2 strides. "Where do you think you're going? Stop, I need that jug to salt my fish. Here, give it to me." "Why, you miserable mollusk. Don't you dare touch me," panted the Red Djinn, trying to beat off the fisherman with his puny hands. "This jug is an important part of me. Without my jug I cannot live at all." "And do you think I care for that?" sneered Bluff. "You're just an old lobster in a pot to me. Here, give me that jug." Seizing Jinnicky by both arms, Bluff tried to shake him out of the jug. Nina, enraged at such barbarous treatment of the only one who had ever been kind to her, proved an unexpected ally. Flying at the fisherman, she began to scratch and claw his face and hands so successfully Bluff had to drop Jinnicky to grab the cat. The force of the drop sent the red gin rolling over and over, dislodging a small silver bell from a hidden pocket in his sleeve. As the bell fell tinkling to the flagstones, Jinnicky gave a bounce of relief. His magic dinner bell and up his sleeve all the time. How had he ever forgotten it? Oh, now. If Ginger had not been destroyed by Gludwig and just answered the bell, everything would be different. And Ginger did answer the bell, and everything was different. My, yes, so different. Bluff threw the cat at Jinnicky and simply raced for the door. No wonder in his small, nine-sided shack were now an elephant carrying a silvery princess in his trunk, a black boy in a tall turban, and a white boy in a sparkling crown. With one more terrified glance, Bluff took to his heels and never stopped running till he was waist-high in the non-estic ocean. Chapter 16. All together at last. Kabumpo, Randy, oh my mercy me. Rolling to his feet, Jinnicky tottered over to the hearth and, encountering Ginger halfway there, clasped his faithful bellboy to his shiny glass bosom. As soon as that bell rang, I knew everything was going to be better, he puffed. And I rather expected Ginger, but you! Why, my dear old Gaboskis, fancy meeting you here. But I don't fancy it at all, grunted Kabumpo, placing the sleeping princess gently down on the fisherman's bench and glancing disgustedly round the mean little hut. How in Ev did you ever happen to be in such a place? How did you get here, and where in Oz are we, anyway? Oh, Jinnicky, are you really all right? Grasping the little wizard by both arms, Randy examined him carefully from top to toe. Kabumpo and I came to see you, and instead of you, there was Gludwig in your castle. He told us you were at the bottom of the sea, and after first trying to destroy us with his army, he flung us into the castle basement. There we found Ginger sealed up in a big drum, and we let him out, and after a while, in a way I cannot figure out at all, we find ourselves here. How did it happen? Why, Ginger brought you, of course. Releasing the little black boy from his tight embrace, Jinnicky planted a huge kiss on his ebony forehead, and with a flashing grin the slave of the bell vanished into space. Don't worry. He's always going, but he'll come back any time I ring the bell. You must all have been touching Ginger when the bell rang, so naturally when Ginger answered the bell he brought you right along. Nothing natural about it, fumed Kabumpo, drawing his trunk wearily across his forehead. But you haven't told us how you got here, said Randy, bending over Planety to see that she had made the trip without coming to any harm. And what is that, pray? Demanded the little djinn, eyeing the sleeping princess with round, astonished eyes. Something you brought me for a present? A pretty little idol you've stolen from some heathen temple. My mercy me. What a beauty it is. I'll mount it on a ruby pedestal and worship it all the rest of my days. Oh, no, Jinnicky, no! Randy's voice broke, and he could not utter another word, try as he would. In puzzled concern, the red djinn turned to Kabumpo. She's not a present, but she's an idol, all right. Randy's idol, and he intends to spend the rest of his life worshipping her, if I read the signals aright, said Kabumpo dryly. There you see the princess of another planet, old boy, and up to an hour ago she was as live and bright and happy as any of us. But what happened to her? Oh, my mercy me, another mystery. Jinnicky clasped his hands in genuine distress. Well, you tell us what happened to you, and then we'll tell you what happened to her and us, offered Kabumpo. That is, if we don't die of hunger first. Hunger? Jinnicky swallowed 4 times in rapid succession. Oh, my mercy, me and us, you do not even know the meaning of the word. I have not eaten a bite for 7 months, but har, 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 har. That is all over now. With my magic dinner bell right at hand, why should anyone be hungry? 4 dinners, and at once, beamed the Red Djinn, ringing it smartly. See, my dear, I've not even forgotten you. Jinnicky leaned down to stroke Nina, who had hidden behind the hearth-brush when so many strangers came dropping into the hut. This valiant Nonagon puss fought bravely in my defense, and has thereby earned herself a place in my heart and castle for all the rest of her 9 natural lives. But first, you must get back your castle, said Kabumpo as Jinnicky began dancing up and down the room, the miserable cat hugged tightly in his arms. Even Randy had to smile at that. No one could be around the little Djinn and stay sorrowful, and worried as he was over Planety and Thun, the young king could not help feeling that now they were together, everything was going to turn out right. Somehow and way Jinnicky would help them. Isn't this like old times? He beamed, bustling around like a busy host as Ginger, with 4 enormous trays balanced on his head, flashed down, set an appetizing dinner before each of the company, and melted away like smoke up the chimney. For Nina, he had brought 9 saucers of cream and some minced chicken. For Kabumpo, a huge bowl of assorted nuts and another bowl of cut raw vegetables, each bowl capable of replenishing itself, so that there was enough for even an elephant. For Randy and Jinnicky, there were the finest of roast duck dinners. So, forgetting their mean surroundings and Gludwig's wickedness, the 3 royal wayfarers fell to and ate with an abandon and gusto that would have astonished their own castle-holds and footmen. Nina, lapping up her rich and plenteous viands, seemed to grow fat and content before their very eyes. And while they dined, Jinnicky explained how he had been tricked by Gludwig, pulled out of the sea by Bluff, and then nearly shaken out of his jaw by the surly fisherman, who at the same time had shaken out the bell and brought him assistance. "Where is he? Wait till I get my trunk on him," raged Kabumpo, glancing sharply round the 9-sided shack. Jinnicky, on his part, when he discovered how Gludwig had treated his friends and visitors, was no less enraged and indignant. "Used my very own patented trap floor on you, did he? Ha! Wait, I'll fix him." Beating his small hands angrily together, Jinnicky's eyes burned with a bright red hatred. "Yes, we were floored, all right," admitted the elegant elephant, pushing away his 2 bowls, for at last he had had enough. And while Randy and the Red Djinn were finishing their suppers, he told the whole story of their journey through Oz and Ev and Ix, of their meeting with Planety and Thun, and the sad fate that had overtaken these loyal comrades in the Red Castle when they could no longer avail themselves of their own vanadium springs. "Vanadium," murmured the Red Djinn, resting his head in his chubby hands. "I believe I could make a substitute for that. Why, in my laboratory." "Yes, but this isn't your laboratory," sighed Randy, "and how ever are we to get off this 9-sided island if all the fishermen are as hateful as Bluff?" "Har, har, har. Now that is the least of our troubles." Jinnicky waved airily to the owner of the cottage, whose glum face had just appeared in the window. "Ginger shall carry us back, as easily as he carries the trays. First I shall ring the dinner bell. Then, when Ginger appears, I shall hang on to his coat. You, Randy, must hang on to me, and Kabumpo, bless his big heart, shall hang on to you, being careful to hold the princess of this other planet in his trunk." "Oh my, mercy me! I'd almost forgotten the cat." Scooping up Nina, Jinnicky waited till the elegant elephant had lifted Planety in his trunk. Then, taking the silver bell from his sleeve, he gave it a cheerful tinkle. "Oh, this!" puffed the little Djinn, blowing a kiss to the glowering fisherman. "This is the finest place to leave I've ever left in my whole life. Oh my, mercy me, you and us. Here's Ginger. Hold on, everybody. We're OFF." And they were, sailing along as smoothly behind the little slave of the bell as if they weighed nothing at all, and leaving Bluff running in frantic circles round his hut, for he was now more convinced than ever that this was a nightmare, or that, worse still, he had taken entire leave of his wits and senses. Chapter 17. In the Red Jinn's Castle. While Jinnicky and his friends had been having all these ups and downs and hair-raising experiences, Gludwig had passed an exceedingly pleasant and profitable evening. As his enemies had dropped into the cellar of the castle, the silver staff of Planetti, missing him by a wide margin, had fallen harmlessly at his feet. Gludwig's army had had much to say of this terrible weapon, and picking it up, he turned it gloatingly over and over in his hands. It is true that he had all of Jinnicky's treasures and possessions, but in his whole 7 months in the castle, he had not discovered a way to use any of the Red Jinn's magic, nor been able to cast a single spell or transformation. This had taken half the zest out of his victory, but here he had a simple and easily managed magic weapon. Or had he? Frowning suddenly, Gludwig wondered whether it only worked for the silver war maiden who had used it so disastrously against his men. Well, he would quickly find that out. Stepping to the door, he whistled for the huge hound that guarded the outer passageway. As it came bounding to his side, he hurled the silver staff at its head. As the staff struck, the hound's progress was instantly arrested, and instead of a live dog, he had a life-sized bronze with a look in the eyes that made even Gludwig turn away. But the staff did work. As it returned to his black hand, Gludwig hurried out of the throne room, rushing here and there about the castle to cast the staff again and again at his unsuspecting aides and servants. "Are you mad?" hissed Glubdo, coming upon his brother in the act of petrifying a small boot boy. "If you continue in this reckless fashion, who will do the work or wait upon us?" "Oh, I've only tried it on a dozen or so," said Gludwig, holding the staff jealously behind his back. "Mind you don't overstep your authority, brother, or I might be tempted to use it on you." Chuckling wickedly at Glubdo's shocked expression, Gludwig mounted to his own quarters and, hastily throwing off his clothes, curled up in Jinnicky's sumptuous ruby-trimmed four-poster. He was too weary to descend to the cellar and deal with his enemies, and resolving to finish them off the first thing in the morning, the miserable impostor fell asleep, Planetty's magic staff clutched tightly in his hands. While he slumbered, strange things were happening below stairs, for just as the clock in the tower tolled, 2 Ginger noiselessly set his royal passengers down in the deserted throne room and vanished away with a flashing smile. Snapping on a ruby lamp, the Red Jinn looked around him with a long sigh of content. Motioning for Kabumpo to place the sleeping princess on his comfortable cushioned throne, he tiptoed about, touching one after another of his possessions. "Where do you suppose he is?" whispered Randy, treading close behind him. "I don't suppose I know," Jinnicky whispered back. "Where would he be but in my own royal bed? Come along, we'll take him by surprise and the ears and throw him out of the window." "Careful now, boys, step softly. Confound the black-hearted scoundrel. He's been using the silver staff." Sorrowfully, the little Jinn paused before the statue of his favorite dog. "Never mind," comforted Randy. "When you find a way to restore Planetty, she'll find a way to undo this mischief, and you know you still have Nina." "Yes," said Jinnicky, placing the Nonagon cat tenderly on a red cushion. "Come on, then. We'll creep up on him. Nobody's around, nobody's on guard. This should be easy." Stepping softly up the broad stair, Kabumpo as lightly as any of them, the 3 made their way to Jinnicky's vast bedroom.
Leave him to me,
begged the elegant elephant in a fierce whisper. "I'll wring his neck with my own trunk." "No, wait. I'll ring my dinner bell," puffed Jinnicky, "and have Ginger carry him to the other side of the Nonestic Ocean." "Even that wouldn't be far enough," muttered Randy, tiptoeing over to the bed. "If we just knew where he had hidden Planetty's staff, we could turn him into a big brass monkey, for that's just what he looks like." "Ho! I do I?" The unexpected interruption made them all jump. Gludwig, wakened by Kabumpo's first whisper, had lain silently watching from beneath his long lashes. Now tossing back the silk covers, he sprang up, throwing the staff straight at Randy's heart. Now let's see what you'll turn to, he panted savagely. Too startled to move or act, Kabumpo and Jinnicky watched in fascinated horror as the staff struck. And strike it did. But instead of petrifying Randy, the rod passed like a flash of lightning through the young king's body and returned to Gludwig's hand, leaving Randy live and lively as ever he was, lively enough, in fact, to leap forward, snatch the dangerous weapon, and bring it down hard on his red-wigged head. With a thud that splintered Jinnicky's best bed, Gludwig fell back. "What did I tell you?" exclaimed Randy, and indeed the former holder of the castle in his petrified condition looked as much like a brass monkey as Randy had said he would. "Oh my, mercy me! Oh my, oh me!" With trembling fingers, the red djinn began to feel Randy all over. "With my own eyes I saw that staff go through you, lad, yet here you are, no mark, no statue." "I declare I'm—" With tears running down his nose, Jinnicky embraced Randy over and over. "Out of that bed with you!" screamed Kabumpo. "Out!" And winding his trunk round the rigid Gludwig, he flung him violently out of the window. As the image fell with a resounding clunk into the vegetable garden below, the elegant elephant sank on his haunches and mopped his brow with one of the red silk bed-sheets. "Never, never do I hope to live through such a moment again," he groaned, blowing his trunk explosively. "I thought you were frozen and done for, my boy. Done for!" Rocking to and fro, Kabumpo blinked the tears out of his eyes. "I don't understand yet why I wasn't," admitted Randy, wriggling out of Jinnicky's grasp and touching the spot where the staff had struck him. "Someone or something was protecting you," declared the little djinn, nodding his head like a mandarin. "Do you carry any charms or talismans against evil, my boy? Not a one." Turning out his pockets, Randy displayed a collection of knives, rubber bands, coins, and the other odds and ends that a man usually stores in his pockets. Among the strange assortment were 2 small, squat jars, and on these Jinnicky pounced with a triumphant little crow. "Why, Randy Spandy, Jack-a-dandy, you have 2 bottles of my best weapon-turning elixir. How did you happen to have them?" "Those?" Randy squinted down at the bottles in positive mystification. "Oh, I must have picked them up in the cellar. Of course I did. I remember distinctly now." "Oh, glory me, har, 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 am I a good wizard or am I a good wizard? And to think you should have happened on the very thing you'd be needing." Jinnicky danced in exuberant circles. "Shh! Hush! Somebody's coming!" Crowding all his belongings back into his pocket, Randy turned in alarm. Half the courtiers and servants were crowded into the doorway, and when they saw Jinnicky and his friends instead of Gludwig in the royal apartment, they began to back away in chagrin and embarrassment. "Oh, it's all right," Jinnicky waved airily. "You threw in your fortunes with the wrong man, that's all. You'll find Gludwig below in the cabbages. But I forgive you, he added impulsively as his former mine workers began to stammer apologies and excuses. "Go back to your beds now, but see that breakfast is on time and hot and appetizing." With an impatient nod of his head, Jinnicky dismissed them, and, looking very downcast and crestfallen, they hurried away. It was a long time before the Red Djinn and his rescuers could bring themselves to retire. There was so much to talk of, to wonder over, and to plan. But finally, even Randy acknowledged that he was sleepy, and confident that Jinnicky would find some way to help Planety and Thun in the morning, he curled up on a small red sofa and fell into a peaceful slumber. As for Kabumpo, he stretched out on the floor, and Jinnicky, not caring to occupy a bed so recently slept in by Gludwig, made himself comfortable on a bear rug beside the elegant elephant, enjoying the first real rest he had had in 7 long months. Chapter 18. The Red Djinn Restored. Word of his return had quickly spread through the Red Jinn's vast dominions, and when Jinnicky and his guests descended next morning, a whole loyal Black Legion were cheering from the courtyard and lined up along the shore. After Gludwig had seized the castle and enslaved the household, the rest of the natives had fled for their lives, refusing to stay or acknowledge the red-wigged impostor as their ruler. Now that Jinnicky was restored and safely at home again, their joy knew no bounds. Appearing briefly on one of the castle balconies, the Red Jinn made one of his best and merriest speeches, telling of his experiences and assuring his faithful flock that Gludwig was gone and would trouble them no more. To prove his statement, he pointed to the fallen figure in the cabbage patch. Glubdo, fearing Jinnicky's anger, had already left for an unknown destination, and now there was nothing to be done but restore the kingdom to its former cheerful status and prosperity. While the Red Jinn, Kabumpo, Randy, and Nina breakfasted happily on the terrace, a willing delegation marched off to the ruby mines to release Ali Babel, the courtiers and servants from their long servitude. The miners who had taken their place in the castle and army were only too willing to return to the mines, for with Jinnicky back in power, their hours were short, their wages high, and each miner had his own cozy cottage and garden. The petrified miners who had served in the army that issued out to capture Randy and Kabumpo were stood along the highways to act as signposts, and also as warnings to all of the hard fate awaiting those who lent their ears to treachery and their arms to rebellion. Randy could hardly contain himself while all these necessary matters were attended to. The young monarch spent nearly all his time arranging and rearranging the cushions on Jinnicky's throne, where Planety still lay in complete beauty and insensibility. Kabumpo was almost as bad, pacing anxiously between the throne and the terrace where Thun had been carried by 50 interested blacks. Even if I cannot bring them back to life and activity, they are a handsome addition to any castle, puffed Jinnicky, sinking down at last on one of his red lacquer sofas and fanning himself rapidly with his lid. Oh, my mercy me! Don't look at me that way, my boy. Of course I'll do my best and double best. But suppose my best is not good enough? Oh, it will be, declared Kabumpo, giving the Red Jinn a little pat on the back with his trunk. I'll bet on your red magic any day in the year. Look at the way that Elixir saved Randy from the magic staff. Where is Planety's staff, by the way? Sort of dangerous to leave it about. It's locked up safely in my iron cabinet, said Jinnicky, closing one eye. So you really think I'm good, old Gaboskis? Better even than the Wizard of Oz, eh? Oh, much, asserted the elegant elephant, wagging his head positively. All right then, leave me, begged the Red Jinn, fairly pushing them out of the throne room. I've ordered all my magic brought to me here, and here I'll stay till this pretty little princess and her charger come out of this metal trance. My mercy me, trance, entrance entrancing. Oh, har, har, har. I've an idea there, my boys. Bouncing off the sofa, Jinnicky skipped over to the princess of another planet. Oh, Kabumpo, do you think he really has? Whispered Randy, as he and the elegant elephant hurried through the door of the throne room and closed it softly behind them. Chapter 19. Red Magic. The hours Randy and Kabumpo spent waiting for Jinnicky to summon them to his throne room were the longest and most anxious they had ever endured. Even if he does restore them, groaned Randy, pacing feverishly up and down one of the garden paths, he'll have to send them straight back to another planet. Rumpling up his hair, he looked wildly back at the elegant elephant who was just behind him. And if they go, declared the young king in a desperate voice, I warn you, Kabumpo, I shall jump on Thun's back and go with them. What? And leave M.E.? Gasped the elegant elephant, putting back his ears, and your kingdom and friends and all your responsibilities. No, no, Randy, this won't do. Besides, you'd probably perish in that outlandish metal wilderness with nothing to eat and no place to rest your head. You can't do it, my boy, and furthermore, I won't let you." Snatching Randy up in his trunk, he held him as tightly as if he were already running away instead of threatening to do so. In the course of this bitter argument, and as the young monarch began pummeling Kabumpo futilely with his fists, they were both lifted bodily into the air and set swiftly down in the red throne room. "The master has good news for you," explained Ginger. "Look!" With his flashing white grin, the little bellboy pointed to the throne itself and then, as was his wont, inexplicably vanished. What he saw made Randy rush forward and fling both arms round the Red Jinn's neck. "Oh, you did it. You really did it," he cried, embracing Jinnicky all over again. "How can I ever thank you enough?" "Where am I?" murmured the clear silvery voice that Kabumpo and Randy knew so well. "Oh, what a netiful castle. Randy, and there you are, Big Bumpo and Thun. But how did we come out of that debasement?" Without bothering to answer, Randy seized Planety's hands and looked at her as if he were never going to stop. "You're the same, and yet different," he mused, scarcely able to believe what he saw. "And Thun is the same, yet different, too. I am Thun the Thunder Colt now then, and always," announced Thun, and gave a frightened jump, for he had actually spoken the words at the same time they went spiraling up into a sparkling sentence over his head. "Oh, princess, princess," he whinnied joyously. "Do you hear? Do you see? I can talk, I can hear, I can see and hear myself talking." At each word, Thun gave an ecstatic bound and then began racing madly round and round the throne room, in and out between the red pillars, leaping over chairs and tables in a positively hair-raising fashion. Oh my, mercy me," faltered Jinnicky, and scooping up the non-Agan cat, he jumped up on a red tabouret. "Stop them, somebody, stop them. Whoa, there. Come back here, Thun, come back, we want to look at you." Running after the Thunder Colt, Randy caught him by his plummy tail and hung on till he actually did stop. "And he doesn't make a sound when he gallops, not a sound," marveled Jinnicky, edging nervously over to his throne and taking a seat beside Planety. "A sound but soundless steed. Har, har, har. And do not mind his breath, Randy, it cannot burn you now, it's cold fire and will not singe a thing." "But how did you do it?" demanded Kabumpo, touching Planety lightly with his trunk. "Oh, partly by my red incense, partly by my red reanimating rays, and partly by an old incantation against entrancery," explained Jinnicky, as Randy brought Thun back and handed him over to Planety. "Do you feel all right now, my dear, and as beautiful as you look?" "Oh yes, oh very yes," answered Planety, smiling shyly round at the Red Jinn. "And you, I know it now, you must be the wizard so wonderful of Ev. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I should say, hey hooray!" Randy threw his crown up in the air and caught it. "Wonderful enough to save himself and us, too." "Oh, so many things have happened, Planety, since you and Thun turned to cold metal in that awful cellar." "I must make a note," muttered Jinnicky, patting Thun rather cautiously on the neck. "I must make a note to clean and cheer up that cellar. My mercy me, I haven't been down there for years. And if I never see it again, it will still be too soon," grunted Kabumpo, leaning up against a red pillar. "Look, Jinnicky," he muttered out of a corner of his mouth as Randy and Planety moved over to one of the windows, and Randy began to tell the little princess all that had happened on Non-Agan Isle, and Thun began kicking up his heels and talking to himself just for the fun of the thing. "Look, will these two have to go straight back to their own planet?" "That is what is worrying me," Jinnicky said, speaking behind one hand and patting his hound, also released from its enchantment, with the other. "I managed to reawake and reanimate them, but, as you've probably noticed, they are changed. Most certainly they are alive, but no longer of living metal, see? The girl's hair is no longer of fine spun metal strands. but it is real hair, still silvery in color as her skin retains its iridescent sheen. But I'm very much afraid, as things are, that the princess and her cult are unfitted for life on that far and rigorous planet of theirs. Yes, Chiniki nodded his head emphatically. I'm very much afraid they'll have to content themselves down here and live, eat, and behave generally as natives of Oz or Ev. What? Trumpeted Kabumpo so fiercely Nina jumped out of Jinniky's arms and hid under the red throne. Oh, say it again, he begged, swallowing convulsively. Great Grump, why this is the best news I've heard since you've come up out of the sea. You mean they won't care? Exclaimed the red Jinn, rubbing his palms nervously together. Care, spluttered Kabumpo, waving his trunk toward the small red sofa where Randy and Planety sat in rapt and earnest conversation. They care for nothing but each other, old fellow. Right there, my dear wizard, sits the future Queen of Regalia, or I'm a blue-bearded nanny-goat. Oh my, mercy me, you don't say. Oh, har, har, har. How delightful. Why, this calls for a celebration, a feast and a fiesta. Beaming with interest and benevolence, Jinnicky banged on the side of his throne with both fists and his elbows. Prepare a feast, he ordered breathlessly as Ali Babel, his grand vizier, entered in a calm and dignified manner, showing no ill effects from his long months of servitude in the ruby mines. Prepare a feast, old Tollywog. There's to be a wedding with rings, bells, palms, presents, and all the fruity fixings. A wedding? Ali Babel looked sternly at his master, whom he instantly suspected of being the groom. Then, as the red Jinn, grinning wickedly, waved to the engrossed pair on the red sofa, he nodded briefly. In that event, he remarked, backing rapidly away as he spoke, I earnestly advise your majesty to have a haircut. Oh, my mercy me, did you hear that? Screamed the Jinn as he turned to Kabumpo, his face very red and angry. I certainly did, roared the elegant elephant, giving Jinnicky a playful little push. Hasn't changed a bit, has he? And neither have you. The last time I was in this castle, he was advising the very same thing. That's all he ever thinks of, fumed Jinnicky, fingering his long locks lovingly. Then, as his eye rested again on the happy little princess and the prancing thunder colt, his expression grew milder. Randy, Randy, he called, jerking his thumb imperiously at his royal guest. See here, my boy, he explained, puffing out his cheeks importantly as Randy came to stand beside the throne. I have done my part to save your little princess, and now you must do yours. Unfortunately, Jinnicky's face grew long and dolorous. Unfortunately, Planety and Thun from this time on will be unable to exist on another planet, so now, without a home or country, what will become of them? In mock distress, the red Jinn stared down at his young friend. Oh, Jinnicky, how wonderful! Oh, Jinnicky, do you mean it? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Pressing the little Jinn's hands, Randy went racing across the throne room. Planety, he whispered breathlessly in the little princess' ear. How would you like to be Queen of Regalia, to go back to Oz with Thun, Kabumpo, and me, and live in my castle for always? Oh, I think, Planety's soft yellow eyes fairly danced with surprise and happiness. I think that would be very nice. Oh, Randy, that would be netiful, netiful. Chapter 20. King and Queen of Regalia. The feast to celebrate Randy's and Planety's wedding was the grandest and merriest in all the merry annals of Oz and Ev. It was, in fact, a double celebration. The Red Jinn's return and his victory over Gludvid was enough to keep his subjects cheering for days, and to honor his rescuers, and especially the little princess of another planet and her royal consort. The Evians outdid themselves, putting on one show after another. There were parades and pageants, fireworks and speeches, and so many presents and parties it makes me jealous just to think of them. Over and over again, Planety and Thun rejoiced in their new life and way of living, and eating the delicacies prepared by Jinniky's chef was not the least of its privileges. In the Red Jinn's castle, eating was a pleasure as well as a necessity. But after a month's merry stay, during which every point of interest in Jinniky's vast realm was visited, the travelers bade the little Jinn a hearty and affectionate adieu. Mounting Kabumpo and Thun, and laden with gifts and good wishes, the young king and queen set out for the land of Oz and their own royal castle. Uncle Hoochafoo had already received his instructions, and as Randy had predicted, things were very gay, very different, and very cozy in that regal and mountainous little kingdom. Planety's staff, powerful as ever, was a great help and protection to the young rulers, and the small red handbag that packed itself went on many journeys with the little queen of the country. If this story were beginning instead of ending, I could tell you a whole book of adventures they had traveling with Kabumpo and Thun through the great land of Oz. For these days, the elegant elephant spends almost as much time with Randy and Planety as he does with the royal family of Pumperdink, and most of it in travel. And in Oz, what a gay way one travels! The other morning, as I lay dreaming of them all, I got to thinking how nice it would be if the horses on milk wagons here were all soundless gallopers like Thun.